Okay, so you know how it is right now. You're just trying to keep up with everything going on, trying to figure out what's actually important and what's just noise. Well, that's kind of the whole idea behind this deep dive we're doing, just cutting through all of that. And today, we're diving into those protests that have been going on against Tesla and the reaction from Pam Bondi, the former attorney general. And our main source for this is actually a transcript from a YouTube video that takes a pretty unique look at all of this. And what we're trying to do is figure out these different perspectives on what's been happening with Tesla and then, what it all means legally.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting case, you know, because the same events are being interpreted in completely different ways, especially when you bring politics and, loaded language into the mix.
Right, exactly. So let's get into it. The YouTube video starts off by talking about what it calls massive protests against Tesla, and these have been happening lately. And then it mentions that along with these protests, there's been acts of vandalism, and specifically they talk about Tesla vehicles being set on fire, which, obviously pretty serious stuff and could cause a lot of damage.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Arson,
Yeah.
it's not just about property damage. It's a public safety hazard, too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge step beyond peaceful protest.
Absolutely. And here's where things get really interesting. So the video brings up former Attorney General Pam Bondi, and it specifically points out that she was Donald Trump's handpicked individual, because she represented him legally in the past. And you kind of get the feeling that they're trying to frame how we see her statements because of this.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It makes you think about whether Bondi's take on the situation is, influenced by her political ties. Is she just giving a straight legal analysis, or is there something else going on there?
Exactly. So Bondi was on Fox News Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo, and they were talking about the, violence against Tesla. And Bondi's saying this isn't just some random vandalism. She actually says these aren't vandals.
Interesting. I wonder what she's seeing that makes her think it's more than just vandalism. Is she implying that it's coordinated or that there's some kind of ideology behind it? Because by saying it's not vandals, she's definitely suggesting something more organized, maybe even dangerous.
And she doesn't stop there. Bondi goes on to say that these are Molotov cocktails that could be a weapon of mass destruction. And even Maria Bartiromo is like, wow. Bondi keeps going, saying that they're throwing these Molotov cocktails at Tesla dealerships and that charging stations are being set on fire in neighborhoods where people live. She's really emphasizing how much damage this could cause.
Oh, yeah. The language she's using is really amping up the seriousness of it all. Throwing around terms like weapons of mass destruction, even with a could be in there. It just creates this image of a major threat. And legally speaking, weapon of mass destruction can be a pretty broad term. Sometimes it includes things that could cause a lot of harm, even if they're not, super sophisticated. So Bondi using that term even with the could be, it's obviously meant to make people feel like there's a real danger here, taking it way beyond just property damage.
For sure. And from the legal side of things, she mentions that there have already been 3 federal charges filed, and that's just so far. And she's very clear that those who are in custody could be facing up to 20 years in prison. No negotiation, she says. And she even goes so far as to say that this might be a concerted effort and labels it as domestic terrorism.
Wow. And, when you look at the bigger picture, that label domestic terrorism carries a lot of weight, both legally and in how the public sees it. Legally speaking, to call something domestic terrorism, you usually have to show that the intention was to intimidate or force a civilian population to do something, or to influence government policy through threats or force, or to try and change what the government does by using mass destruction or assassination or kidnapping. It's a much higher bar than just vandalism, even if that vandalism is politically motivated. So Bondi taking a no negotiation stance and mentioning these serious federal charges, it signals a very strong response and potentially an escalating one.
Yeah. Okay, so now this is where the YouTube video transcript offers a totally different perspective. The person who made the video responds directly to Bondi and says very clearly, no, it's not domestic terrorism. It's vandalism by the letter of the law. It is vandalism. So yeah, total disagreement right there.
Yeah, and this really highlights the main conflict here. One side is saying these actions are terrorism motivated by politics.
Yeah.
The other side is firmly saying that it's just criminal damage to property.
And it's really important to point out, which the video creator does, that they specifically say, I do not support or condone that at all, talking about the violence and vandalism. They believe it actually underscores the actual movement, the Tesla takedown, right, protest. but in a bad way. Like it might actually hurt what the protesters are trying to achieve.
Right. And that's something to think about. Even people who might agree with some of the reasons behind the protests can see that using violence and vandalism is a bad idea and can actually end up hurting the whole movement.
Exactly. So the video creator analyzes things a bit more and suggests that while there are probably some protesters who are legitimate and have real issues, there are also agitators, people who just want to cause trouble. They join these movements and do destructive things and end up hurting the cause. But they keep saying that this still isn't domestic terrorism.
Yeah, that's something you see a lot in different kinds of protests.
Yeah.
The people within the group might have very different reasons for being there, might do different things. It's important not to lump everyone together and to understand that there might be people with different agendas involved.
Right. And then the video creator asks a really interesting question. They say, if this were happening to Ford, would it be considered domestic terrorism? Right? If somebody went to a Ford dealership, lit an F-150 on fire, would you consider that domestic terrorism, or is that just an act of vandalism? Is that property damage? It really makes you think.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if the fact that the target is Tesla, a company connected to Elon Musk, a very well-known and sometimes controversial figure, is influencing how people see the crime. Does it matter who's doing it and who they're doing it to? Are we biased when it involves someone or a company that's politically charged?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what the video creator is getting at. They're saying just because it's connected to Elon Musk, who they called Donald Trump's BFF, doesn't automatically mean it's domestic terrorism, and that people should be facing 20 years in prison for what they see as vandalism. They think it's wrong to just randomly assign a label to this specific thing because it hurts Elon Musk's feelings, and that it's ruining people's lives over acts of vandalism.
Yeah, it sounds like they think the law is being applied unfairly here. Like maybe it's politically motivated or they're trying to protect powerful people and companies. And they're suggesting that the charges are way too harsh for what actually happened, and that maybe it's all because of who the target is.
Exactly. And the video creator isn't too confident in Bondi's legal strategy either. They say, by going overboard with the charges, you're increasing the odds that these people actually end up getting off, meaning that a jury might not want to convict on such serious charges if they think that what actually happened, while illegal, doesn't really qualify as domestic terrorism.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes if you charge someone with something too serious, it can backfire. Juries might not want to give someone a really harsh sentence if they don't think the charges match up with what the person actually did. It makes you think about whether the response is appropriate,
Right. And to wrap it up, the video creator gives their final thoughts on Bondi's actions, and let's just say they don't hold back. They say, "Congratulations, Pam Bondi, you're stupid on all fronts." That's the way it is when you put stupid people in positions of power. What are you doing? It's over. Definitely some strong feelings there. Lots of frustration and disagreement.
Yeah, it's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
But, even though the language is strong and it's clearly just their opinion,
Yeah.
it shows how divided people are on how the Attorney General is handling this.
Yeah.
And how much disagreement there is about what to call these events.
Yeah. So basically what we've got here is this big conflict. On one side, some people are saying that what happened to Tesla is domestic terrorism, that it involved weapons of mass destruction, and that serious federal charges are totally justified. On the other side, people are saying that while what happened was illegal and wrong, it's really just vandalism and property damage. They think calling it domestic terrorism is going too far, and that maybe it has to do with political connections and who Tesla is.
Right. And it brings up a really important question for everyone to think about. What's the real difference between vandalism and domestic terrorism, legally and ethically? Is it all about the intention? Or is it about how big it is and how much damage it could cause? How do we separate vandalism that has a political motive from actions that actually threaten society as a whole?
Yeah, and to take it even further, how does the fact that the target is a high-profile company with connections to a powerful political figure, how does that affect how people see it and how the law responds? Are we seeing these legal terms being used fairly and consistently, or is there something else going on behind the scenes?
It all comes back to how powerful language is and how the labels we use shape how we understand events and what might happen because of them. It's so important to really think critically about the different stories we're being told and to consider why they're being told that way. What do you find most interesting about these contrasting viewpoints, and what do you think it means for us?
Yeah, that's something for everyone to ponder.